What's up, guys? Chris here with Gaming Kinda, and there's been a lot of talk around the WoW community now that we're all out in the world leveling outside of just regular expansion launch. That people are running into this group called multiboxers. I think much of the WoW community is aware of kind of generally what they are. Final Fantasy 14 players or other games where that's more frowned upon may not be used to it. Things like EVE Online, it's fairly common. So basically what a multi-boxer is, so we'll start there, and then we're going to move into is it allowed within World of Warcraft? Should it be allowed? And so this will be a big, long kind of talk, and we'll stop briefly on like why people do it in the first place. So a multi-boxer is simply a person that is controlling multiple accounts of a game, multiple instances simultaneously. They're not doing this through a bot or anything that's controlling it for them. They're actually doing this through a piece of software. The most popular that I always see around is IS Boxer, but there are others where basically every time you push the W key, they all move forward. Every time you push the A key, they all move left, and so on. And so if you don't push anything, if you don't move your mouse, if you don't push a keyboard, none of them do anything. You can usually tell it's a multi-boxer because the way that they make that feasible is they're all standing like right on top of each other, or they're standing dead still in set spots around like a farm, and they're all casting at the same time. There are ways where you might have like 2 monks and 6 druids, and what they'll do then is they'll bind all the druid abilities to like the 1 key, and they'll bind all of the monk abilities to the 2 key, and that means that every time they push 2, there won't be anything on the druid's number 2 spot, so nothing will happen. They'll all get sent the number 2, the monks will do something, the druids won't, and then when they push the number 1, the druids will all do something, the monks don't have anything on their 1 key, so they'll just stand there. But they're all being sent all of the signals, all of the inputs. So this is very different than botting. So is it against the rules? The simple answer is no. The simple answer is that World of Warcraft does require that they are all running their own legal authorized versions. They all have to have purchased versions of the game. They actually, in order to facilitate this and make this easier to handle, they allow you to create up to 8 accounts underneath one battle.net login. So you can have just maybe one launcher if you only have 8, up to 8 accounts. If you see people in 16, you might see them move to 2 accounts. The most I've ever seen anybody try is 216. I've seen people do 40, 16-man, 24-man, all these different numbers. But most of the time you see them in either 1, 2, 5, 8, or some multiple of 8 after that. It's very rare that I see somebody doing something, unless they're like, I don't know, in a weird raid or something. It's very rare that they're not in a multiple of 8 after they get to the first 8. And that's why, because they're under one battle.net account. So they do allow this. They don't allow them to be controlled by botting software at all. So while IS Boxer is allowed, because all that's doing is taking my inputs and sending it to multiple instances of software, it's still me behind all of the commands. They don't allow me to harass anybody. Therefore, just by the very nature of it, they don't allow me into PvP. There are restrictions, right, on kind of what they can and cannot do. I can't go do exploitive behavior, which is very loose in how that's interpreted. So if I'm glitching a mob or something where because there's so many people here and they're all being controlled in a certain way, it's causing something to happen. That's why sometimes you'll see multi-boxers get banned for something like a farm where they're farming up a bunch of grays and it becomes a raw gold per hour, which we're seeing currently. If bans like that go out, that's because they're able to obtain an unintended result because of their ability to control multiple characters. That does not mean that they're getting an unintended result if they're doing a 4x2 farm, because when a multi-boxer with 8 characters is doing a 4x2 farm, that is no different than 8 friends. It just happens to be that it's all one person, but it is the same result. It just happens to be one person pushing a key simultaneously 8 times across 8 keyboards, and it's somebody and over here it's 8 separate keyboards being controlled by 8 separate players, but ultimately it is a player pushing each and every key that a character responds. There's just a piece of software so that I don't actually have to have 8 fingers to push the W keys at the same time. So The simple answer is no, it's not banned, but then when you expand on it, you see how they can very quickly cross into behavior that would be bannable. That would be bannable if anybody did it. If you do anything exploitive, anything that's over harassing, anything like that, you can get banned. But it's much easier to get noticed or to cross thresholds when you're able to do something times 8 or times 16, where like farming up grays doesn't seem that great. So why do people do it? First of all, it's a new and different way to play. Doing a farm on a multi-boxer is very different than doing that farm individually, because you have to optimize for how suboptimal it is. So I can't have all my characters perfectly dodged. Think about like a raid fight like Spine, where like the boss rolls. That's really hard to do on a multi-boxer. It's really simple to go back and just farm solo. And so there are things that you can new and interesting ways of how would I farm this if I was not as dexterous per character. How would I do this? It also allows for force spawning on things like when you're going back to farm primals or anything like that. Various, whether you're farming materials for Vial the Sands or whatever, it allows you to trigger force spawn and some unique spawning behavior that's not exploitive. It's the nature of it, but it would require a very large group of coordinated people to log on exactly at the same time as you and do it for the exact same amount of time, as opposed to, I don't have that risk if I am all of those people. And so sometimes you'll see maybe 2 multi-boxers sharing a farm if it's a larger farm. And I think that's how a lot of people get started, right? You and me and some friends. Okay, now we each bring 2 characters. Now maybe a few people don't make it, so we each bring 4 characters. Okay, now I'm just going to cut you guys out altogether. When I wake up in the middle of the night and can't sleep, I'm just going to do it to it. I'm going to be all 8 people. So that's definitely one of the things they do. They also allow you to make an incredible amount of money. So if a WoW token is farmable in, let's say, 5 hours, 5 hours of a standard farm generates a WoW token in the current market conditions. Okay. My first 5 hours generates a WoW token. Every hour after that, I make profit times 1 character. Now I log on to a multi-boxer. Now remember, they're suboptimal. So it's probably going to take me 6 hours to do that 5-hour farm, because there's going to be things like, say you're running an instance over and over. Every time I come out of the instance, I may have to reline things up. It gets a little goofy. So I'm probably losing time in there. But hour number 7, right? So 6 hours in, I've gotten a token. I've lost an hour on you. But hour number 7, say I'm doing an 8 box, I now have 8 hours of profit. So I've more than purchased that. So like as soon as I've hit the token, I sprint ahead. Up to the token, it's identical, because for 8 characters, I need 8 tokens. So no matter how long it takes me to get to a token, I need each character to be farming its own token during that time. So there is no profit. Where it becomes profit is when you play in that 7th hour in that example, or the 8th hour or the 9th hour. So when you see people popping on to do 4-hour farms twice a week, they're making their token in the first or second time of the month. And then every time after that, they're just making crazy money. And that is multiplied by however many accounts and however many characters you do. Now, the other side of that is there's a risk. If you ever just take a month off and you let all that roll, if you don't buy it with tokens, you are theoretically paying for that many accounts, and tokens are real money. It's just not your money. It's another player's money. So absolutely, that's why Blizzard loves these, because a multi-boxer with 8 accounts is paying 8 subscriptions. They might be paying it with gold, but remember that a token's gold is just representative of somebody else's money. It's actually bought at $20, not $15. So they're even getting a premium version of your sub from all of those other people. Many multi-boxers don't even pay the sub on their primary account. They don't pay any subs. And when they go to buy a copy of Shadowlands, they buy 8 copies of Shadowlands with gold. So many multi-boxers can get around this altogether. That's why you'll see a lot of multi-boxers tend to gravitate towards things like gold making communities or like that, because they have a token problem that they need to take care of. And so they don't want to just make gold because it's fun. They want to make gold somewhat optimally. And so many of them may track things like gold per hour and compare farms and contrast things and how well is this selling. And they can very quickly start to learn all these things that we probably should have learned in school in economics as part of the game. So we're 10 minutes in, and all I've done is explain, is it allowed? Yes. Why do people do it? Now, does it break anything? Yes. So when they added multi-tapping to ore veins, basically when you were a miner and you were out mining, there'd be like a big bad guy, maybe a wolf or whatever, standing on an ore, and you're like, okay, to mine that ore, I'm gonna have to kill that wolf, and you're killing the wolf and you're doing it, and then some guy just runs right by you, mines the vein, and leaves. Cool. So Blizzard said, well, that's not very nice. So what we'll do is once a vein is mined, it'll stay there for 30 seconds, and it can be mined by more people. That makes sense. But we don't want like raids of people taking advantage of this, because then you can go get like super rare veins like Corium, and you could have like multiple sets of 40 all run there at once and get 160 Corium. Okay, well that's not okay. So we'll set the cap at 10. Well, what ends up happening is multiboxers, of course, respond by running in a 10-man. So gathering people will run in 10-mans. And they'll have 10 mining druids, and they'll land on there, and they'll land, and you're right behind them, and you see the big group, and you're like, I can't tell how many's in there, but I hope it's not 10. Because if it's an 8-man, if they're just on one Battle.net account, it's no big deal. They tap it, you move on. If it's a 10-man, they tap it, it disappears immediately. And that sucks. So, like, when you're out trying to farm quest mobs, if you whisper them, usually they'll be decent. But sometimes they're not, and they're killing all the mobs in an area instantly, so you can't get the tags you need. That sucks. It does. So when they're just out there doing their own thing, farming something that you're nowhere near, or they're running 8 instances simultaneously across, 8 servers, and you don't see it, I don't think they're hurting anybody. But they can very quickly ruin things. So should they be banned? No. But should they be held to a stricter standard of what things like harassment mean? Yes. Should they be held to a stricter standard of what exploitive means? Yes, because if you're cheating 50,000 gold per hour into the game with some farm, and you play for 2 hours and you log off, there's 100,000 gold times however many players did that. That can artificially lead to inflation and all of that, and it becomes a big question of should we go back and ban them? Did they know? And all of that. But when those people start coming in at 8 at a time, the amount of material, the amount of gold, whatever the farm is breaking, becomes very, very large, very, very fast, and can crash markets from people that weren't doing anything wrong, can lead to rampant inflation. If 10 sets of 8-boxers go out and they all get themselves on separate shards on separate servers and they're doing their thing, they can generate, 17,000 rune cloth per hour is a number that I've seen a real multi-boxer generate. You can see how that would very quickly break a market if that farm was not intended. If that farm's intended, it is no different than 8 separate players doing it. But if they're doing something manipulative that is only allowed because their 8 characters are in perfect sync and that it could not be mimicked by 8 separate players, then that's a problem. As long as they're 8 players paying for real accounts and they're just doing something that I can do debatably worse or up to equal to, I'm fine with it. When people start using multi-box software to outperform me to the point where they are now harassing me or pushing me out of market, where I'm being bullied for being somebody who is so simple that I only want to play one copy of a game, that becomes unfair. That becomes a behavior that I start to disagree with. Most multi-boxers I've met are not like that. They really, if you message them and you say, hey, I'm trying to get this quest mob, they'll back off. They'll go get a drink of water or whatever. Like, hey, no big deal, man. But there are a handful that can give that community a very bad name very, very fast. So I've seen a big discussion going around lately of like, it is bannable. It is against the rules. It is not. There have been blue posts about it. It is not bannable. As of this point, it is not only not bannable, the system is set up to reward it and to encourage it and to allow for it. They've all but built IS Boxer into the software, which is a separate subscription to a separate thing that is not owned by Blizzard. So it's like having an add-on that's paid, like Zygor Guides or whatever. So it's not banned. But where it should be starts to become these ethical gray areas. Are you doing something that is actively punishing people? You're not just playing the game at a larger scale where, basically you're getting to pool the resources of 8 people without asking because all 8 people are you. I don't have to ask a friend for all his linen cloth and wonder what he wants in return if that friend is me. And so I'm okay with that. I'm okay with these perfectly synchronized groups of people. I think it's reasonable to keep them out of PvP because it's no fun to run up and somebody one-shot you because they can do 8 times an instant cast simultaneously. I think that kind of breaks things. World PvP, it gets a little funny because actually in World PvP, since you kind of get the jump on them, typically you can beat them. Because typically they're not really geared for it or anything. They're just kind of geared at whatever they're doing. So actually, usually you can kind of pick their team apart. And once their team falls apart, they tend to just want to die and reset. So you can usually that's very anecdotal for me, but every time I've come across a multi-box team with war mode on, I haven't had any trouble just taking that as a chance to get 2, 5, 8, 10 kills. And you can just ruin their day. And they go turn war mode off, and then they can do whatever they were doing. So like I'm perfectly fine with it. I wanted to kind of touch on what is multiboxing? Is it against the rules? Why do people do it? And then reach out to you guys and see what the ethical concerns are. It's not allowed in games like Final Fantasy. It's just not. And I'm not saying there aren't people doing it, but they cannot be as open about it. They can't have streams titled Multiboxer. They can't, they can't put all their accounts underneath one login that are all logged in simultaneously, all doing the exact same content at the same time, because if Square sees that, they can and will ban you. Square will ban you if you just go out and post screenshots of you multiboxing and they find them. They will ban you for stuff they see on Reddit. They will ban you for stuff they see on Twitter. They will ban you for stuff they see on Twitch. So like breaching their terms of service, bending their rules beyond what they intend, they will absolutely ban you. They ban for people that are bullying around DPS meters. You are not even supposed to have a DPS meter. And so that's a very different community. So, there are people within WoW that I think would want that. And then there are people within 14 that would love to multi-box. And probably there are ones that are multi-boxing. So I would say that in general, I just kind of wondered what you guys' thoughts were. Do you think multi-boxing is okay? Do you think it breaks the rules? Does it not matter? As long as they're paying for the game in a premium way, they're massive source of revenue for Blizzard. So are you willing to put up with a certain amount of it as long as they stay where they're not ruining your gameplay? World of Warcraft is a big place. It has a lot of shards, a lot of servers. So like, are you okay with it as long as they're over there? But let me know, especially if you guys have a multi-box experience, either with one or you are a multi-boxer. I'd love to know. Thank you so much for watching. This is not official news or anything. This is not a tutorial on multi-boxing. This is just me talking about gaming, kinda. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.